How the heck did the Packers do it again? Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to an episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't, I do Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. Yeah, this felt like the right video to make. Grossi, and today we are going to be talking about one Jordan Love and kind of also trying to see how the heck did we get to this point? How the heck did the Packers draft and develop another great-looking quarterback? And hey, the answer probably is not going to surprise you because it's a really boring answer, but it's one that a lot of NFL teams do not practice because they don't have the luxury to do so. And so I'm going to break this all down. I'm going to go way back to 2020 before the draft, talk about my reaction to the draft and, of course, the pick, and then what we have learned going forward and how it's also indicative of how the Packers run their organization. So let's get started. And don't worry, we're going to talk about the draft reaction video because if you're brand new to the channel or if you subscribed all the way back in 2020 like a lot of you did, you've probably seen my most popular video, which is this one. Oh, who are we gonna get? Mims? Queen? Please God, not Jordan Love. Are you shitting me? See, I had some strong feelings after the Packers drafted Jordan Love, and it actually had nothing to do with Jordan Love, the player himself. Instead, the Packers had just gone to the 2019 NFC Championship game in a year where they definitely overachieved. Aaron Rodgers didn't look like his Aaron Rodgers self, still had a good year, but not like what we were used to seeing. And heading out of the NFC Championship game, there was two positions that were of dire need for the Packers. One, somebody to frickin' frack and stop the run, because the 49ers at that point ran all over us, and the Packers had no answer for it. And the second position that we really needed to look at was wide receiver. So much so that I did a wide receiver video years ago highlighting the problem that the Packers had created. Now, years later, it's obviously a different story and we have a plethora of talent, but back then in 2019 and 2020, our wide receivers weren't the greatest. And so because of that, those were the two positions that I thought were the most dire need for the Packers, and then they went quarterback. Doesn't matter if it was Jordan Love, doesn't matter if it was Justin Herbert, I don't care who it would have been. The fact that the Packers drafted a quarterback, I was not too pleased at the time. And we'll get to my reaction, but then this begs the question, why did the Packers even draft Jordan Love in a time where they didn't really need a quarterback? You still had Aaron Rodgers under contract, and even if he wasn't playing like his elite self, he was still playing well as a top 10 QB within the league, so why even go for Jordan Love? And to answer that question, we have to go back before the draft, because shortly into 2020, after the NFC Championship game and all that, rumors started to circulate that maybe Jordan Love would get selected by the Packers. Now, at the time, Jordan Love was seen as a pretty raw prospect. He was looking at a potential first rounder because he had the talent. He showed those glimmers of, wow, he could really play, but also had a lot of work to do when it came to accuracy, especially on the deep ball, talking about staring down receivers, and all this stuff could be fixed, and obviously it was fixed, but at the time, it was the consensus of basically the entire scouting community, and even when I looked at him, that he needed some work. For example, one of the biggest criticisms of Jordan Love's tape was the fact that he went from his second year to his third year and almost tripled in interceptions, throwing 6 interceptions his first and second year and 17 in his third year. So you talk about his accuracy seemed to decline, but at the same time, and I made a whole video about this when I scouted Jordan Love, he also didn't get a lot of help from his wide receivers. That team wasn't really that great. While Jordan Love could be a great prospect, especially if he sits behind Aaron Rodgers for years. Should we focus on the future right now, or should we focus on winning with the team that we currently have and bolstering that team to get us into the next Super Bowls? And I actually went back and I found my old notes on Jordan Love that I made from that video. And apologies for the chicken scratch because I'm a former teacher. That's just how I write. And a lot of it's probably going to bore you. A lot of it is stats talking about the pros and cons of Jordan Love. But the last line, that one always hits for me. Because the last line reads, Project QB, but sitting behind Rodgers could be amazing. And what I mean by Project QB is the fact that whoever drafted Jordan Love, it was going to take time for him to develop. And you saw this the first few years of his career where he didn't get a ton of playing time. And when he did get playing time, it showed that he definitely needed to develop because going from college to the NFL is a little bit difficult. So at this point, as the Packers are getting closer to the 2020 draft, rumors are starting to get a little bit more intense that Jordan Love could definitely be of interest to the Packers. And at this point, I'm hoping for a Patrick Queen or a Denzel Mims because it gives us a linebacker or it gives us a wide receiver target that Aaron Rodgers desperately needed. And this is where my reaction video comes into play because the infamous video now has me saying, please give me Queen or please give me Mims. Give me Queen or give me Mims. Give me Queen or Mims, referring to Patrick Queen and Denzel Mims. And instead, the Green Bay Packers elected to draft a quarterback. So Jordan Love shows a lot of potential. So yeah, I screamed into a pile of shirts. And it's funny because at the end of that clip, because I wound up just clipping it out of the original stream, at the end of the clip, after screaming into a whole pile of clothes, I pick my head up and go, so Jordan Love has a lot of potential. Because at the time, I was just not happy that the Packers drafted a QB. I said this multiple times because I thought the Packers, with the foundation they have, they just went to the NFC Championship game, they overachieved a little bit, but there's obviously a great team there, and that was proven correct because in 2020 and 2021, they were the first seed in the NFC, and Aaron Rodgers went on to win MVP 2 years in a row. And to be honest with you, before this video, I hadn't really gone back and checked on those videos because I kind of forgot what I said. I just thought it was me screaming into a bunch of clothes and I was upset about the fact we got a quarterback. But it turns out that 2020 Tom, maybe he was a little level-headed because it was not just me. At the time, there was outrage of the Packers picking Jordan Love and picking a quarterback. And like I said, it was never Jordan Love for me, but the fact that we went out and got a QB when at that time we didn't need one, people were a little perturbed. But on that same stream where I scream into a pile of clothes, there's a moment where I go, okay, let's get real for a minute. And I wind up breaking down how this could be a positive thing. Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre, obviously became the quarterback that he was. Jordan Love is the guy that needs to sit behind an Aaron Rodgers. And I think he can learn a whole lot. And I honestly think, that he could be the future QB of the Green Bay Packers because the Packers have a history of doing this. Of course, they went and traded for Brett Favre. They had drafted Aaron Rodgers in 2005, which was met with all the negative reaction. Of course, you have the infamous clip saying that Aaron Rodgers is going to bring him to the toilet bowl and Brett Favre is going to bring it to the Super Bowl that every single Packers fan knows of. But in 2020, 15 years later, the same exact thing happened again. And after the stream was over, I wound up putting out a video talking about Jordan Love and my thoughts on it. And I had a few words of wisdom to say. I think why a lot of people are upset is because this puts a definitive timestamp on Aaron Rodgers' career as a Green Bay Packer. We have seen what Aaron Rodgers can do with a chip on his shoulder. And he kicks ass. I feel like this might make him kick ass even more. And so like, okay, you drafted my successor. Because make no mistake about it, we're trading a 4th rounder in the 1st round to move up. We're not picking a backup quarterback here. What this means is that we are trying to protect our future. And while that is an unpopular move today, we might be thanking him later. And it's one of the last lines in that video that really sticks with me now that going back and watching it. And it's talking about how Goody, everybody's going to be really upset about this, and we might hate him for it now, but we might be thanking him later. And here we are in 2024, and I know a lot of Packers fans who are thanking Brian Gutekunst. But that was the immediate reaction, and I want to talk about, okay, so this is all the controversy of drafting Jordan Love at that time. How did the Packers develop a great quarterback? Because as we were talking about, just about everybody universally agreed that, yes, he could be a 1st-round talent, but there was a lot of work to do. And unfortunately, when Jordan Love was drafted, it wasn't just the fan reaction that was a problem, but the other issue was COVID was happening. And because of that, we did not see Jordan Love at all for preseason because there were no preseason games. So this brand new QB the Packers just drafted, we knew absolutely nothing about. And that would continue the following year going into 2021 because while, yes, Jordan Love did play in the preseason, he was also banged up for a couple of games. And to be honest with you, there wasn't anything really exciting to see about him in 2021. You saw a couple throws that were like, ooh, That's pretty good. But then there was a lot of inconsistencies. There were a lot of errors. And you looked at that and go, okay, he needs to develop. And on top of that, he didn't have an offseason program after he was brought in from the draft. And so that is probably going to slow down that development a lot. We also saw Jordan Love play for the first time in 2021 when he went up against the Chiefs in Arrowhead, and he played decently well. Again, nothing too flashy, nothing too crazy that we see today, but there was at least some progress there going, okay, maybe there's something there, even if it doesn't look the best. And then in 2022, the year before he would play, he lit it up in the preseason. And you saw him make these huge leaps forward. And this is what I'm going to start to begin to talk about, because my question is, why? What happened from 2020 all the way up to 2022 that Jordan Love magically got better? Was it the training? Was it the coaching? The answer, yes. And this is where I sing the praises of one man in particular who has a great first name, and that is Tom Clemens. Now, if you are a Green Bay Packers fan, you know who Tom Clemens is. But just in case you aren't, let me talk to you a little bit about Tom Clemens here. Because Tom Clemens, he has been with the Green Bay Packers for a very long time. From 2006 all the way to 2016, he bounced around as the QB coach, offensive coordinator, and eventually assistant head coach for the Packers. And at that time, he worked with Brett Favre, but was also crucial to the development of Aaron Rodgers. And you don't have to listen to me for that, because Aaron Rodgers said exactly that. So much so that when Aaron Rodgers returned to Green Bay and said that he was going to be staying for the foreseeable future, signing a big old contract, one of the things he advocated for was bringing back Tom Clemens. Because Tom Clemens had wound up leaving Green Bay. He actually went to Arizona from 2019 to 2020. And in those 2 seasons, Kyler Murray, 3,500 yards, 500 rushing yards. And in 2020, Kyler Murray, he went to a frackin' Pro Bowl. So Tom Clemens is kind of like the QB whisperer. He knows what he's doing. He has developed Hall of Fame quarterbacks, and even when he was working with Kyler Murray, he saw a big leap in his production. Now, eventually, Tom Clemens decides to retire. But when Aaron Rodgers indicates that he will be returning to Green Bay, signs that contract, he goes, I want Tom Clemens back. Now, of course, in 2022, Jordan Love is not the starter. Aaron Rodgers has a pretty good season, but nowhere near what we're used to. But the point is that Tom Clemens also starts to work with Jordan Love. And then you see Jordan Love in the 2022 preseason, and you see how good he looks. And I also want to make this very clear. This is not to say that Jordan Love didn't do all the work, all that crap. He did all of that, right? I'm sure from the equipment manager all the way to Tom Clemens to Matt LaFleur, Jordan Love got a ton of support, which helped him play even better. But the point that I'm trying to make is the Packers had the personnel in the building. They saw what worked, and their Hall of Fame quarterback at the time, in Aaron Rodgers, basically requested to bring this guy back, and the team said, you know what? Let's go and do that. And whether they were trying to appease Rodgers or not, it turned out to be a phenomenal decision, because you can see the development that Jordan Love has had. And so that brings us to 2 points here that we need to touch upon. The Green Bay Packers are able to develop Jordan Love because they have 2 things. 1, they have the luxury of time. I have made multiple videos over the years about this because I think it is fascinating, talking about QBs who didn't work out in the NFL. If they went to another team, if they didn't get thrown right into the fire, what could they have looked like? And the Packers, just like they did with Aaron Rodgers, they made the decision, which was a big risk at the time for Rodgers and also for Jordan Love, to draft a QB with their first-round pick when they didn't need one, knowing that they were going to have the luxury of time. They were going to have years to try and develop this guy who had shown a ton of potential and try to get him ready to be the starting quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. And even on draft night in 2020, people were like, well, maybe we're going to trade Jordan Love, we'll develop him, kind of a Jimmy Garoppolo situation. And I said, nay. I think that the Packers just drafted the successor to Aaron Rodgers. And now that's not me saying, oh, he's definitely going to work out, because like I said, this is a huge swing for Goody. And that whole 2020 draft was super weird because they drafted for the future after just going to an NFC championship game. And so all the kudos to Brian Gutekunst, because this could have blown up spectacularly in their face. You talk about how the things with Aaron Rodgers went and how that could have looked bad. And now sitting here in 2024, things are looking pretty good. But back to my original point, the Packers had that luxury of time. They had a QB that was already set. He was going to be there for at least the next couple of years, and that would give Jordan Love the time he needed to develop. And oh wait, it worked out pretty damn well.
What we did with Aaron and what we did with Jordan,
Yep.
I think gives them a chance to be successful.
Correct.
Yeah. Because, you see it a lot. Talented young quarterback, plays right away, loses confidence, and and sometimes they never get back.
Yeah.
So, and there's an old saying in the NFL: the best time to draft a quarterback is when you don't need one.
Correct. Because you think about how a lot of QBs enter the league today, a lot of them go in the first round if they're highly touted prospects, and they get thrown right into the fire. They're usually the worst teams in the league. They sit behind bad offensive lines, or maybe a coach who's about to be fired, or maybe a brand new head coach, and it's not an ideal situation. And then you turn around and go, oh wait, that didn't work. Let's just go draft another quarterback. And I know Bears fans' ears are starting to perk up a little bit, and this is not to throw shade at your organization. You could just watch them play and you could do that. The point that I'm trying to make is that the Bears could be making this mistake again. Now, it seems like they're talking to Cliff Kingsbury because they're likely going to draft Caleb Williams, and maybe that's going to work out. But Eberflus could have potentially lost his job this past season because he did not look great, even though the defense did get better. But the point that I'm trying to make, and it's not just about the Bears, it's about all these organizations, even with Patrick Mahomes sitting behind Alex Smith, there is a method to the madness of actually sitting players before they get an opportunity to play. And this gets to the heart of how the Green Bay Packers run their organization, because it's not just with quarterbacks they do this. Rashawn Gary was drafted when we had Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith. Hell, Lucas Van Ness, who we just drafted this year as an edge rusher, a raw prospect, a great athlete, but needed to develop. We drafted him, and we had edge rushers in Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary. And so while you can never have too many edge rushers, the point that I'm trying to make is the Packers have always been a patient franchise. And sometimes that is at their detriment when it comes to free agent signings or potentially moving on from coaches that they should have moved on for. But at the end of the day, the Packers do have this mentality that they are willing to invest in players and wait it out, because the Packers are a true draft and develop team. And so it shouldn't be any surprise that they're doing it with the most important position in football when they draft quarterbacks. And of course, there's outliers here, right? You look at Joe Burrow, who's able to come in and do amazing. You look at CJ Stroud tearing up the league right now. You look at a Brock Purdy, right, who was the last pick of the draft. He's now playing against the Packers in the divisional round. It is not a one-size-fits-all. However, I think this method has proven to churn out some pretty damn good quarterbacks. And we talk about, how did the Packers do this? How are they so lucky? Of course, there is a little bit of luck involved, right? But at the same time, there is also a process that is at work here. There is time, development, and that brings me to my final point: staffing. Coaching personnel, having the right coaches around Jordan Love. Because the second year that he was in the league, there was lots of talks that were kind of coming out from the team, says, ooh, Jordan Love's not looking that great in practice. He might not be the guy. And then Tom Clemens comes in, and I know a lot of work from Jordan Love also led to this. But look at the development of where he is now. Jordan Love has been playing some of the best football of any QB this past month and a half, and now he is leading his team into the divisional round against the 49ers. And regardless of what happens, whether I put this video out and the Packers lose tomorrow, the point is that the Packers seem to have struck gold again. And while, yes, there is definitely a certain amount of luck in there, at the same time, the combination of great staffing and time and investment has allowed the Packers to be in this position. And this is with a very young squad. Hell, Jordan Love didn't even have his full roster of receivers on offense until this past Sunday. And so for now, going into tomorrow and going into the offseason, the future is very bright for the Green Bay Packers. And while other teams are probably upset about it as they continue to look for their franchise QB, and while there's plenty of franchises and fan bases who are looking at this and going, damn, the Packers did it again. How do they get so lucky? It ain't all luck. Sometimes it's how the organization is run, and even though they get a ton of criticism for it, as I said on draft night, it might be unpopular at the time, but you might be thanking him for it later. And right now in 2024, we're saying a big ol' thank you. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. You know, I saw me at Tom Grossi Comedy. All social media is seen down below. A big shout out and thank you to all the patrons and YouTube members for supporting this channel. And thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.